This is what happened to me when my father's friend came out alone with a towel, but then I couldn't help but be enraptured by his large masculine figure. Stay to the end for this story. So make yourself comfortable, and we invite you to subscribe to the channel and activate the little bell so you don't miss any video. It was an ordinary day, one of those days when nothing seems out of the ordinary. I, Javier, a young man of 19, was at my friend Diego's house. The two of us had been inseparable since we were little, but there was something about me that Diego never knew. Something I never dared to tell him, something even I myself had tried to deny for a long time. The attraction I felt for his father, Francisco, was something I could not control. Francisco had always been a strong and protective figure, but what struck me most was his relaxed attitude and calm nature. He was always willing to give me advice, and sometimes you could see the complicit look we shared, but all that remained unattainable. Also, I thought. That afternoon, Diego and I had planned an outing to the movies, but first, as usual, we stopped by his house to pick up a few things. The day had been long, and Diego's house felt like a refuge, something I deeply appreciated. On the way back to the living room, where we were going to drop off our backpacks, something surprised me. As I rounded the corner, I saw Francisco coming out of the bathroom, wrapped only in a towel, which hung from his waist, naturally tight. The towel, wet and slightly disheveled by the movements, gave a glimpse of his muscular torso, a masculine figure so defined that for a moment I forgot everything around me. Are you liking the video so far? If so, leave us a like and subscribe. Let's keep going. The scene paralyzed me. I couldn't take my eyes off him. His marked muscles and the way he moved confidently, without any concern for the presence of others, made a lump form in my throat. How had I not noticed the strength of his presence before? How had I not noticed that my attraction to him went beyond normal admiration? When Francisco saw me, his expression changed for a second, as if he had realized that something in me was not right. But then, with a warm smile, he greeted me, as if nothing had happened. "Hi, Javier, how are you?" he said, his voice deep and comforting as always. I tried to respond, but the words stuck in my throat. How could it be so obvious? What would he think if he knew the truth? I only managed to smile and nod, trying to remain calm. I felt completely out of place, as if my world had taken an unexpected turn. Diego, who didn't seem to have noticed anything, patted me on the shoulder and told me we were going to the movies. But for some reason, I couldn't stop thinking about what had just happened. Francisco walked out into the kitchen, letting his towel move with every step. My mind kept going back to that image, his body, his gestures so natural, as if nothing was out of the ordinary. But I knew it was not ordinary for me. We said goodbye to Francisco and left the house. On the way to the movies, I tried to calm down, but the thought of what I had seen wouldn't leave me alone. Diego talked about some movie he wanted to see, but I just nodded, unable to concentrate. My mind was still occupied by Francisco, by that towel, by the way he had made everything I thought about myself fall apart. That night, after the movie, we went back to Diego's house. The atmosphere was still the same, but my inner self had changed. I couldn't stop thinking about Francisco, about what I had felt when I saw him, about what he had awakened in me. Desire, fascination, everything was at the forefront, and I could no longer ignore it. Diego invited me to sleep over at his house, as we always did. The house was quiet, and in the end, I stayed on the couch while Diego went to his room. But sleep did not come. In my mind, there was only one image, that of Francisco with the towel, smiling at me without knowing what was really going on inside me. Before we continue, we invite you to like and subscribe. Let's continue. I don't know how long it took, but I finally fell asleep. That's when the door to the living room slowly opened. I couldn't hear footsteps, but I knew someone was approaching. I opened my eyes and saw the silhouette of Francisco standing close to me. My heart was pounding in my chest. "Everything all right, Javier?" he asked, his voice soft but full of a certain authority I had never noticed before. I couldn't respond right away. I was completely disoriented by Francisco's closeness, but more than that, I felt an intensity in the air that we had never shared before. It was then that he took a step toward me and sat down on the couch next to me. Silence enveloped us for a moment. "Diego is asleep," said Francisco in a low tone, as if he wanted to keep the conversation between the two of us. Why don't you tell me what's wrong? You seem a little distant. I didn't know what to say. My mind was so overwhelmed by everything I was feeling that words escaped me. Finally, I let my body speak for me. Without thinking, I leaned into him and, with a mixture of anxiety and need, kissed him. The kiss was gentle, but also full of repressed passion. At first, Francisco seemed surprised, but soon his hands found my face and he held it firmly, deepening the kiss. My heart was beating a mile a minute as I felt excitement and desire take hold of me. Don't forget to subscribe and like us for more content like this. Let's continue. When we finally pulled away, Francisco stared at me, his eyes full of something I couldn't identify. For a few seconds, neither of us said anything. The tension was palpable, and although I was completely confused by what had just happened, something inside me told me it was what I had been waiting for. I don't know what's going on, Francisco finally said, his voice low but soft. But I think this. I feel it too. I think I'm not the only one who has felt something different. It was a relief to hear that, but at the same time, uncertainty enveloped me. What did it all mean? What would we do now? Could we move forward without destroying everything we knew? I don't want this to change what we have, I said, my voice shaking. Francisco smiled, and at that moment I felt that everything stopped around me. Without another word, he leaned towards me and kissed me again, as if our life was a blank page we had just written. That night, everything changed between us. The tension that had been present for so long vanished, and although I knew there was much to explore and understand, I also knew that my life had taken an irreversible turn. I had fallen in love with Francisco, my best friend's father, and I didn't know what the future held, but at that moment I was ready to live it all. The next day, I woke up with mixed emotions. My head was still spinning from what had happened the night before. Francisco had been on my mind all morning, and although the desire was still there, so was the confusion. How had it all come to this? What did what we had done really entail? When I got up, I tried to act normal, but I knew things would never be the same. When I went out into the living room, I saw Francisco sitting on the couch, as if nothing had changed. Diego was in his room, and the atmosphere in the house seemed quieter than usual. Francisco looked at me and smiled, but it wasn't his usual smile. It was different, as if we both knew there was something between us that we could not ignore. "Good morning," said Francisco in a casual tone, but there was something in his gaze that made me feel that the whole world had changed. What surprised me most was what he said next as I approached the cafe. "I know this is not easy to handle, Javier, but I don't want you to feel pressured. I'm willing to talk about this when you're ready." Her voice was calm, but filled with a restrained emotion that let me know that, although everything seemed uncertain, we were both willing to face what had arisen. The journey into the unknown had begun. If you liked the video and this content brought you value, leave us a like and share it with your friends so you don't miss it.